to as an improvement of tournament Magic. So kudos to Wizards of the Coast for making that kind of call. We've got our matchup here, Reid Duke versus Todd Anderson, Bug Control versus the Bug Agent deck that was designed by Jerry Thompson.
Yes, and we saw that on camera last round. A couple of fortuitous draw steps by Vidiato Wijaya in some of the critical turns there were enough to push Vidi to victory on the back of Liliana and Chase the Mind Sculptor.
Okay, for those of you who are just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan, here with Patrick Sullivan. On screen to the left, Reid Duke with Bug Control. On the right, Todd Anderson with the Bug Agent deck, opening with the very powerful Ancestral Visions.
Yes, and we saw this do very good work for Jerry and for Todd on camera all throughout this tournament. And an understated sort of something we haven't been focusing on maybe as much as we should have so far in this tournament. Todd Anderson, a real shot at repeating as Invitational Champion. I mean, he's currently in second place. He's probably a win away from locking up a top 8 berth. I think he's in a spot where if he goes lose, he's done. But otherwise, he's probably in the top 8. And having a real shot at being a repeat Invitational Champion. As we see Reid over here, resolve a Thoughtseize, looking in the hand of Charlotte's Agent, Ponder, Force of Will, Polluted Delta, and Wasteland.
On a totally quick aside, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Melissa DeTora in a top 8 of a PTQ right now as we speak. Good luck, Melissa. Any of you Melissa DeTora fans out there, I hope you wish you some good luck as well. Back here in what we'll call the real world of what we've got on our screen, Reid Duke on the left, contemplating what to get rid of with this Thoughtseize from Todd Anderson. Personally, it's, to my mind, a hard call between Ponder and the Charlotte's Agent.
I assume that we had to take Charlotte's Agent. Yeah, the matchup is so slow.
And grindy.
Yeah, Charlotte's Agents, just any sort of 2-for-1 is good, and there's a huge risk, obviously, of that Charlotte's Agent finding an Ancestral Visions, and then it becomes something much more destructive than that. As you see Todd over here, Ponder into him, Charlotte's Agent, and Ancestral Visions. So Todd has a couple paths he can take here. He can put the Visions on top, draw that, suspend it, and next turn Charlotte's Agent into him, or he could try to draw the him and then next turn Charlotte's Agent into Ancestral Visions. So he has 2 different paths he can take here. I personally like suspending the Visions. The matchup's going to go on for a long time, and he can't really cast that him with the lands that he has available to him, so I'd rather be Charlotte's Aging into that.
Those tropicals, easier to find that way.
But Todd taking a different path here.
Wasteland time? A little mini time walk?
Okay.
And back to Reid Duke. Reid Duke on turn 2 here, looking for a useful play. Forest Deathrite Shaman. No, not shabby.
Todd briefly contemplating a Force of Will there, but I think his Charlotte's Agent's just too good to throw away that way.
Ancestral Visions. Polluted Delta. Back to Reid Duke. Reid has access to potentially 3 mana because of that Deathrite Shaman.
Yep. We'll see what he has here. He has a couple 3s in his deck. He has a copy of Vendilion Click and 3 copies of Liliana the Veil. He's going to start things off with a Brainstorm.
God, how much would you like to be a Goblin Guide player in this match?
A lot. I've been thinking about that a lot. Not that I'm regretting, obviously, doing commentary this weekend, but I would have liked to say been allowed to tag in for a round during my break. Just stick me in a tournament, pair me against a random player, it's fine. I'm not playing for any prizes, just give me allow me to put on my gloves for a round. And
I think they should just have that be something we do every tournament. Put us in against the number 1, whoever it is.
Yeah, sure.
They got to actually get through us before they can get their win.
Yeah, just a nice little randomizing element.
For those of you just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here with Patrick Sullivan. Reid Duke is making good use here of his Deathrite Shaman to get an extra bit of mana out of the Wasteland in Todd Anderson's graveyard. I think it's possible we'll see a Liliana. Are there any other cards he could cast off of this mana?
A Vendilion Click.
He goes with the Bob, and was there 1 mana for something else, or is it just...
He had Brainstormed earlier in the
Brainstorm. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I see the Brainstorm right now. The classic Ice Age Brainstorm, my favorite Brainstorm.
I think the artwork on the mask one is a little bit more attractive, but I generally like to default to just older is better.
I feel similarly, though sometimes art will trump it for me.
So we are, as Todd is fetching out here, Dark Confidant very good here. I don't think Todd has a spot removal spell in his hand, and so that Bob might get online and sort of try to keep Reid at pace with the impending Ancestral Visions. So we'll see Todd here. I'm assuming we're going to Starless Agent here. Some big hits potentially. There's Hymn to Torak. That's definitely one of them. So this is bad for Reid, but it does mean that his Dark Confidant is going to get to survive. And in a matchup that's going to go on for this long, that's a really big deal. Jace the Mind Sculptor, revealed by Reid. Does he have the land-to-land Jace here? Todd cannot stop it. His hand is 2 lands. No, we are not going to be landing Jace this turn.
Jace is one of the knockout punches in Legacy. Pretty much the dropping of a Jace, there's often a 1-turn window, or at best a 2-turn window, where you can respond to it before the game is just locked out.
Yes, you have a very tight window, and these control decks are much more about being able to push their own Jace into play than necessarily being able to respond to an opposing Jace. Deathrite Shaman makes 2 mana, and there's a Tarmogoyf.
The Hymn to Torak taking out Abrupt Decay and Tarmogoyf. It's pretty impressive hymn.
So you see Todd just Ancestral Visions into 2 copies of Abrupt Decay, which is pretty awesome. It allows him to take out both Tarmogoyf and Dark Confidant. A Thoughtseize as well for Anderson on his draw.
Thoughtseize hits.
Ponder Abrupt Decay and Jace.
Goodbye, Jace. 2 life well spent.
I'm assuming we're going to be Abrupt Decaying the Dark Confidant. We can afford to take a hit here from the Goyf. We're not in a huge rush to get that off the table. But Dark Confidant, certainly the more threatening of the 2.
The eternal debate, who's better, Goyf or Bob? And Bob getting the nod here in this moment from Todd Anderson.
Certainly in the control matchups, that's almost certainly going to be the answer.
If you want to see the long-form version of this debate, go back to Evan Irwin's The Magic Show covering Valencia, and you can see Paulo Vitor Dama de Rosa, Zach Hill, and numerous other people debating this question. It's a great video besides.
I would say that context matters.
Yes, it does matter.
Ponder for Reid.
Yeah, context is always king when it comes to Magic cards.
Yep.
The points of analysis, though, tend to stay the same. It's just what their situation is in a moment.
Yeah.
As Zach Hill said about Tarmogoyf, it's just a dude with power and toughness. Yeah. Sometimes that's what you want.
Right, I'm much more in Zach's camp. Obviously, Tarmogoyf's an awesome card, a great tournament resume and what have you, but I'm going to err on the side of most creatures that are powerful are because they're good at doing things other than attacking and blocking.
I think there's a reason that Tarmogoyf was not in the vast majority of Maverick decks, which it seemed like an oversight to many people, but you don't need to do that in that old archetype that we haven't seen much in a while.
Yeah, that deck's not that interested. It eventually attacks and blocks, but it is not interested in playing cards that are strictly for that role.
Brainstorm main phase, my favorite kind of brainstorm. We see 2 fetch lands and another brainstorm.
This should be a pretty easy brainstorm for Todd. He's going to put his 2 fetch lands back, use his other fetch land to shuffle. Todd contemplating his next move. Again, his priority is to be in the much more controlling deck in the matchup, as the Ancestrals give him an awesome late game. The issue is Reid's actually pressuring him quite a bit. He's got 2 Tarmogoyfs and a Deathrite Shaman that can start removing spells, and Todd only has the 1 Abrupt Decay currently.
Yeah, I mean, we know that Todd has an Abrupt Decay. Reid Duke can presume it's a card that's present from Todd Anderson, but if we just look at what's on the table, Todd is like half of a breath away from dead right now.
Yes. And that Ancestral is going to come off next turn, and that could potentially find him all the tools he needs to stabilize, but for the time being, he's sweating it out. Another brainstorm from Todd. Delta, Creeping Tar Pit, and Deathrite Shaman. Not a great brainstorm. I'm assuming we're going to set back our lands, drawing the Delta next turn and cast our Deathrite Shaman. That still allows us to Abrupt Decay.
Deathrite Shaman is a really interesting card in these matchups because that ability to have an inexorable life loss that just dodges the attack phase has been relevant again and again in these legacy matchups.
Yeah, and if you watch the Bug Agent deck play, Deathrite Shaman appears to be one of the most important cards in the mirror against it because it's so good on getting ahead on cards, but it still can take incremental points of damage, and then Deathrite Shaman's a huge issue. On top of the mana ramping that it allows. So that Ancestral looming. Will Todd be able to get out of this turn without having to lose too many resources?
Bob.
Looks like Bob's resolving.
Reid Duke.
Making a mana.
Abrupt Decay.
And now the 2 poets come in. One of them's going to draw an Abrupt Decay. And there's a chump block on the other one.
This drops Todd Anderson down to 4 life, and then 3 fresh new cards plus a draw phase. Lots of opportunity here for Todd to come back.
2 lands plus a Charlotte. He's drawn 3 lands and a Shardless Agent.
Starts with the Shard, cascaded up.
Into Thoughtseize. Reid with no hand.
Never you mind, says Todd.
And now Todd is just in a ton of trouble. His hand's just a bunch of lands. He has a Force of Will, but not a Force of Will he can cast. And now Dark Confidence, and that reveals Abrupt Decay, and Todd's just going to concede to that.
And there we go. Dudes with power and toughness putting on the pressure. And I don't have any problem with Todd Anderson's choice there earlier to kill the Dark Confidant. I think that was an important call. But Reid Duke, just so full of threats. His brainstorm's doing exactly what they're supposed to do, filling with gas while Todd stumbled a little bit.
Yeah, Todd Straw was a little bit land heavy there, but he's leaning very heavily on those Abrupt Decays. For them, in some of these other Bug matchups we've seen, you have Tarmogoyf and your Deathrite Shaman, and those cards matter, and you're leaning very heavily on your Abrupt Decays to handle that. But that's really the only pressure that's being generated on the other side.
Yeah.
But Reid has Dark Confidant in his deck as well. That's another card that requires an immediate response. I would say even more so than Tarmogoyf or Deathrite Shaman does, because Bob can just run away with the game in these control matchups. So in this matchup, more so than maybe the other Bug mirrors we've seen this weekend, the removal that the Jerry T build of this deck has is overtaxed. He's only got the 4 Abrupt Decays, and he's playing against a deck that has 12 targets that demand an Abrupt Decay. So that addition to this deck, I think, makes the matchup much better for Reid than some of the other builds we've seen on camera this weekend.
I was thinking as you were talking about the natures of these 2 decks, how you're correct. I think that Todd Anderson's deck is definitely the more controlling of these 2 decks as they pair off against each other. And Todd's decision to try to stymie Reid Duke's mana with that Wasteland on turn 2, I think.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, because I know that an anecdote I've liked to share is how I lost versus Rug Delver because I used the same kind of tactic to stymie their mana, but it wasn't effective because they were more aggressive and they could run on very low mana, and so as a result, all I was doing was hurting myself, even though, Todd essentially put Reid Duke to no permanence. I kind of wonder about that turn, just as a question of which way do you want to go with your play when you're the controlling deck in this kind of situation?
Well, I mean, when I saw Todd's punter there on the second turn into Ancestral, Starless Agent him, I said immediately what my line of play would have been, which would just be draw the Ancestral and suspend it. Next turn, 3rd land, Starless Agent into him. Then after that, if you want to Wasteland, that's fine. You have your 2 Ancestrals looming. You've attacked his hand. If Reid uses a counter spell on your Hymn to Torak, that's fine. That's one less counter he has to fight over your Ancestrals or your Jaces or what have you. Instead, Todd used the Wasteland, then
Reid went back with Deathrite Shaman, essentially undoing some of the Wasteland work.
Additionally, Todd then had to basically shuffle away his Hymn that he couldn't cast, instead of being able to run it out there for free off Charlotte's agent, and you know, that sequence of events might have been a determining factor in the outcome of that game.
Magic is a very complex thing.
Yeah, and that's not even to say that Todd necessarily made a mistake there. It's just I would have taken a different line there, and
none of this is to say that one of these lines is definitively, in our conversation here, the correct line. It's just how many lines there are and the different ways that those paths take you. I mean, It's pretty impressive.
So it sounds like Todd is saying to Reid, you can go first. I'm not positive. He pointed at Reid. I'm not sure if he's allowing Reid to play.
We will see momentarily.
No. Yeah, and that makes sense. You know, in a control matchup, actually, sometimes I do feel it's correct to draw, and people are sort of reflexively always say play. And there's some matchups where that's actually incorrect, but in a Wasteland Jace matchup, it seems like getting out in front is really important.
Well, I mean, getting out in front, getting the opportunity of him to Turok hitting before Daze can hit it, getting out of a Spell Pierce, getting the, Turn 1, Ancestral Vision versus Deathrite Shaman.
Todd with a bunch of Brainstorms and Tarmogoyfs in his hand. Again, a very land-heavy draw. A land, I assume an Underground Sea we're going to go get here. And a Tarmogoyf.
If you're just joining us, you're watching Game 2 of Round 15 in this Legacy event. Todd Anderson trying to come back to make it even 1-1 versus Reid Duke. Both playing Bug. Reid Duke playing, I think, something that's closer to what we consider a standard-ish Bug deck, running Hymns but not running Force of Wills in the current moment. And Todd Anderson running a Shardless Agent Bug deck that was designed by Jerry Thompson. Both of these players very near the top of our standings for the weekend. Todd Anderson, the number 2 player in the Swiss right now. Reid Duke just below him, the number 6 player. Todd is paired down to Reid Duke, and you can expect to see a lot of pair downs right now as we are over-determining these top 8s. 16 rounds, 207 players.
So yeah, a lot of these pairings get weird because you can't play against the same player multiple times in the same tournament until you get to the elimination rounds. And so the pairings have to be a little bit wonky. Sometimes you're going to be seeing players in significantly different parts of the standings be competing against each other.
I think this is one of the few major events that you actually see that come to play. And a lot of people, I remember actually the very first Invitational, they didn't realize that was going to happen.
Yep.
And there was a lot of confusion about what was going on.
So Reid ponders with 1 mana and then uses his Deathrite Shaman to make a mana and his land for the turn to resolve him. So we're Todd loses a Brainstorm and a Creeping Tar Pit, leaving him with Tarmogoyf and Wasteland.
Todd Anderson draws. The Tarmogoyf getting slightly bigger.
Rips a Shardless Agent, which I'll try to stick here.
Cascade does not get the Jace. Abrupt Decay.
Sure, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Little Flame Tongue Cavu.
4/5 Tarmogoyf comes on in. 15 to 18, a strong board presence and an Ancestral Visions ticking down. Todd Anderson looking to be in very strong shape unless Reid Duke does something dramatic here.
Yeah, he needs try to get one of his Planeswalkers online. He needs an Abrupt Decay maybe for that Tarmogoyf. Waste on Wasteland. Reid passes back, strongly representing Abrupt Decay. He has it for the Tarmogoyf. Shardless Agent's going to get in for 2.
Down ticks the clock for Ancestral Vision. Tarmogoyf replaces the dead Tarmogoyf. Reid Duke struggling here to mount some sort of defense.
Yeah, Todd's attacking him from so many different angles. His mana's constrained. Reid's mana's constrained. He's behind on the board. Ancestral's looming. Very hard. It's going to be very hard for Reid to answer all these different varied sorts of threats. A Dark Confidant. Ancestral comes off.
1, 2, 3.
And then Abrupt Decay for Todd.
And then the 4th draw.
So now we have an Abrupt Decay to handle that Dark Confidant as well.
So many options, so little mana.
Or Wasteland.
Todd Anderson has, I believe, 6 cards in hand. Might be 5.
5. Couple of Deathrite Shamans, or Deathrite Shaman and a Hymn, a Goyf, an Abrupt Decay, but only the 2 mana, so can't really maximize that Ancestral yet. Todd talking to himself here.
Well, if I do this, then that happens, and if I do this, then... No, don't say that.
No, he's got no shortage of good options here.
Well, you're not going to block with your Dark Confidant, so I'll hit you for 6. Reid Duke, I think, concurring that he's not going to block with the Dark Confidant, down to 7.
Oh, he has an Inquisition in his hand. That's one of his cards, too. And Todd's going to Abrupt Decay after combat.
Reid Duke struggling here still.
Todd's missed a land drop, though, so if Reid had something like Abrupt Decay, then that Wasteland becomes attractive. There's Liliana.
Okay. Lily turns Shardless Agent into Mincemeat. Tarmogoyf's still there. Another Tarmogoyf in Todd Anderson's hand.
Yep. A lot of heavy hitters.
What you got over there? Well, how about I attack you? Okay, I'll go to 2.
And 2 Deathrite Shamans.
Oh boy, 2 Deathrite Shamans. A lot of people don't realize you can cast them for green. That is a Golgari clan symbol for the mana. He cast Thoughtseize. Let me see your hand. Okay,
Yep.
cool, I'm dead.
Yep, just wants to check out what's going on there. Sees a lot of the same cards he's seen before.
You know, I actually think this is a small thing, but I think that was a really smart small play by Reid Duke, because he does not have Todd Anderson's deck list. They are sideboarded. What if there's a little touch of new information that he could have seen? He didn't see anything new, but you never know. Maybe he would have seen, huh, what's this? I'm just going to make up a card that probably isn't the case. Oh, a Nile Spellbomb. Who knew?
Right. No, definitely, it costs you nothing to check out the hand there, so you might as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to die, so die smiling. And a little bit more knowledge.
So Reid on the play for game 3. This could be a really important thing because it gives him the opportunity to either Thoughtseize or duress the Ancestral Vision out of Todd's hand before he gets to suspend it. Because that card puts a ton of pressure on Reid to end the game quickly or land something huge quickly, which is not something this bug deck is particularly well equipped to do.
Now, some of the other decks at the top tables, you can see Jonathan Job, who is our #1 seed, is currently playing Nicholas Spagnolo, who's playing a 4-color tempo deck. I believe that might be... No, it is actually a similar deck to Joe Bernal, which is the Monster, I believe Joe was calling it.
Yeah.
Splashing for Sylvan Library, splashing for Life from the Loam, and Abrupt Decay, and otherwise like a Esper Stoneblade Shell.
We ran into that deck on Moto. I was hanging out with Drew Levin, who got into town a little bit early for the Invitational, and we ran into Lou Laskins on Moto playing a very similar deck. So
he's one of my favorite people to play on Moto, actually. He's yeah.
It actually is Lou Laskin's deck. Yeah. So I have a little bit of an exposure to that thing. I don't know how he fit in so many basic lands. There's a 4-color deck with like 3 different basic lands in it.
Brainstorm and Prayer?
I guess. I mean, the dual lands do a lot of work, obviously, but I was surprised. The match we played was very drawn out. Drew was playing Esper Blade at the time, and the game went on long enough that we saw 3 different basic lands on a Lou's deck. It's just incredible because it's 4 colors.
Table 2, Leon Kornacki with Elves versus Brian Page with Show and Tell. Sneak and Show if you prefer, because I believe he's got both sides. And here we have got Table 3, moved over to the feature area, Reid Duke and Todd Anderson.
Todd trying to defend his Invitational crown from Atlanta. Probably needs to just avoid losing 2 consecutive rounds here.
Reid Duke, perhaps today's Brad Nelson, came to our awareness, I think, largely as a Magic Online grinder, and has since become someone that everyone in Tournament Magic knows who he is.
Yeah, his combination of success in real life and online at this point. The, critical acclaim or whatever you want to call it of his writing.
Yeah.
He's definitely made a name for himself over multiple formats and multiple different venues. So.
And if you were watching the interchange between Reid and Todd there, you can really tell Reid just kind of gives off that he's a really nice guy, and that would be the truth. If you thought that, you're right.
Yeah, but it's all business at the table. I mean, Reid's not a rules lawyer or anything like that, but when it's game time, I mean, you can tell there's a change.
Okay, so my correction, Nicholas Spagnolo is running Louis Laskin's 4-color deck. The deck that I was thinking it was similar to is Joe Bernal's 4-color monster. This is a different deck entirely.
So a turn 1 Deathrite Shaman from both players. Reid's off of Tropical Island and Todd's off of an Underground Sea.
A Liliana here would be devastating if Reid has it.
Yes, he has the fetch land to make some mana, and we'll see if he has Liliana. You have to imagine this is
1 mana, 2, 3,
and there's
boom!
Liliana. An awesome start for Reid this game.
Elbow drop.
He's going to be able to probably use that. I mean, there's a Goyf. Todd really needs that to prevent this Liliana from taking the game over.
Lily is, Tarmogoyf, currently a Squire, only a 1/2. That's easily fixed as well.
Yep. But Reid's Deathrite Shaman obviously can do a little bit to control this, but looks like Todd's hand has a Jit in it. We haven't seen, he has one, this list has one in the main and one in the sideboard, I believe. I've not seen this in his hand in the earlier 2 games, but...
Reid Duke contemplating his 3rd turn here. A Liliana activation +1. Both players are going to have to discard. Vendilion Click and Hymn to Turok are put to the yard by Reid and Todd.
The Liliana has for Reid has a weird tension in play, against the Tarmogoyf, making it grow, but we'll see if Reid has perhaps an answer. And that Goyf actually is a 3/4 as there's a, no, I'm sorry, 2/3.
Thoughtseize. Here's the Decay.
Yeah, and this is just really bad for Todd now as Liliana has another Edict available.
One of the cards I keep thinking about this entire weekend is Divert.
Yes.
Just imagining again and again what would happen if I Divert hit right there.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it earlier. I'm not sure if I was covering with you that round, but we did Divert. There was a Divert on camera in a bug mirror.
Divert, for those of you who don't know, blue, instant. Change the target of target spell with a single target unless that spell's controller pays 2.
It got an Inquisition.
Nice.
Yeah, it was insane. That person lost the match, but they certainly won that game.
Well, they won my heart.
The more important battle. And now we'll see what Reid wants to do here. I assume that he wants to get that Liliana up to a 3rd counter so he could Edict and he wants to presumably +1 Liliana this turn, emptying out his hand first. Maybe chump block the Tarmogoyf and then use Liliana to Edict next turn and basically run Todd out of gas. Reid also has, we saw from that Thoughtseize from Todd last turn, Reid has a Dark Confidant left in his hand, so he could really take the game over on the back of that Liliana and the Dark Confidant if he sets this up right and Todd doesn't have a particularly good draw step.
Reid contemplating. The use of brainstorms in this format is one of the most important choices one can make in Legacy.
Oh, and he found an Abrupt Decay too.
Lily discards another Lily. Abrupt Decay, the last card in Reid Duke's hand, kills the Tarmogoyf. Todd Anderson, empty-handed, rubs his hands, looking for something.
Charlotte's Agent into Ancestral, maybe? I mean, he needs to find Abrupt Decay or Charlotte's Agent into Ancestral. Those are the big draws.
2 mana.
There's
drops Bob.
There's the Confidant we know about. Oh,
and boom.
He drew Jace. One of the worst draws in the deck in that spot, certainly.
Take that, Jace. Deathrite Shaman hangs back to do some work on Todd's graveyard. We'll wait to see what Todd brainstorms into. Dismember, is that?
Dismember. Dismember's fine. It gets him out of the Confidant. He's still in trouble, but it at least prevents Reid from completely running away with the game.
Take that, Bob.
Not horrible for Todd. Liliana, I'm assuming we're going to be shooting for 2 here.
Takes out the Dismember. Take 2 life. Reid Duke. Main phase Brainstorm.
He's going to be +1ing Liliana this turn ideally anyway, so might as well just fire it off. Maybe he finds a Tarmogoyf for a Bob. That's very good for him as well.
Speak of the devil. +1 on the Lily. Both players already empty-handed. Deathrite Shaman comes in for 1. Todd Anderson scoops it on up.
It.
There we go. Reid Duke is now currently a 34-point player. Todd Anderson stays at 33 points. 1 round left after this for these players.
So Todd, I believe he's going to have to be in win and in position next round now after this loss. Though I'm not 100% sure, but I believe since we have so many 30-point players at this point, there are going to be that will get to 36. Some percentage of these players will get to 36 points. It means that 34 points isn't enough. So I think Todd's going to have to play and win next round.
Yeah.
If he wants the top 8.